right, good afternoon, everybody. Big thanks to you for joining us here today. I'm your host, Sean Claremont, and I have the utmost pleasure of introducing you all to Mr. Alfonso Quadra, who is today's guest. Alfonso, much appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. Really looking forward to your insights, particularly on this topic. How's your day going so far?
Beautiful. The sun is shining. Nice 25 degrees out here in Ottawa. So, everything's beautiful.
Nice. Yeah, we also got nice weather in Central Alberta, so that's always a benefit on that.
Yeah, well, for us, it's we're like finally we got a little warm weather.
Right on. Awesome. So, to anyone who is not aware, Alfonso is the leader of the Quadra Group of companies. He's a serial entrepreneur, real estate investor, speaker, author, success coach, philanthropist, and just really an all-around pretty great guy. So our topic of discussion here today is on investing into apartment buildings, and I think it's pretty important that we do dig a little bit into your background for our audience, Alfonso, just so they can kind of get an idea of yourself, where you came from, your background, experience, that type of thing.
Sure. Sean, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I think it's a really great platform. And we were having that conversation earlier. I think all these different podcasts have been a birth of this, COVID situation that we've been in, and is causing a lot of people to just explore these type of platforms. And you happen to have a really great one. So, I had an opportunity to watch your other shows, and really great questions. And so thank you for having me on the show.
Always appreciate it, man.
Now, I won't get too much into my story. Originally from El Salvador, Central America. I was actually in two different civil wars, El Salvador and Nicaragua. We came here to Canada as refugees. In 1986, I was 9 years old. I had some issues kind of going into school, got frustrated, ended up leaving school at 15 years old, leaving home as well, and being homeless at 15 years old, panhandling for change, had some really dark moments, just like everyone. I'm sure everybody watching this program right now has had a dark moment at some point in their life. I had a life-changing moment at 17. At 17, I became a father. Happy Father's Day coming up. But, it changed my life. At 17, I became a father to this little girl. Her name is Talia. I have two daughters now. One is now turning 25 years old, so you can imagine how long ago that was. And my second one, Alicia, she's 14 years old. So that kind of changed my entire perspective on life. And I stopped blaming the world for my problems. And I started to, wanting to do something with my life and wanting to do something for this little girl. And so I started a business at 17 as a result. And it was a clothing business. I was selling, T-shirts and jeans from my backpack in high school. So I went back to high school. And by the time I was 20, that business was across Canada, multi-million-dollar business. And I thought I was like on top of the world until 9/11 hit, which, of course, it was a big tragedy, and lives were lost. But for the business world, it was a mini contraction, and I was just never used to a mini contraction, and I really felt it, and I almost lost everything. And so by the time I'm almost now I'm almost 24 years old, I'm pretty much at a point where I'm almost going bankrupt. And I realized how vulnerable you are when you're in business, and just business alone, or where you just have one source of income. You're vulnerable to the way people deliver products, new products, technology, what have you. And, I wanted to create a second source. So I went back and rebuilt my business, but I wanted to create a second source of income that was indestructible, Armageddon proof. And this is why I got into real estate, in particular, the multi-units. And I didn't really know what I was doing at first, but I really, really invested in myself, in getting educated. So 2008 came, and I was ready to take action, because 2008, as you know, was our last recession.
Yeah.
And specifically in the apartment building part of things, the lending had really contracted. It really tightened up. Exactly what's happening today.
Yeah.
And I was forced to learn and negotiate. And this is the beginning of, really expanding my mind. And now coming to the present, 2020, I have properties all across Canada. And I know that in my goal, and I don't know, we could talk about this later on, but I have a personal goal. In the next 5 years, I want to get to 75. Sorry, did that cut out?
So 75 You're good.
Doors, yep. with a 10-year goal, getting to. I love it how people love to call you. You're on something. Yeah. And so I used to say these things, but I didn't really know how I was going to achieve it until COVID hit. And the second COVID hit, I said, whoa, I know exactly how I'm going to get to 7,500 doors. And by the time we're done this particular cycle, I'll have achieved my 7,500 doors.
Wow, good for you. There's a couple things that came out of that discussion. I've seen some of your TikTok videos that you do with your daughter, and those things are awesome. Keep doing those. You guys are very, very talented.
You know what? I'll tell you something.
Yeah.
I love business. I love real estate, but I don't take myself too seriously.
Yeah.
I love to live. I love to laugh. Every morning, I want to laugh at something. I want to read a joke. I want to put on some comedy. I love laughing. I love being silly.
Yeah.
And so what I noticed, that all the other platforms are just too serious.
Yeah.
TikTok is the one platform that's allowing people to be themselves, right?
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah, and there's been an explosion of content on TikTok, like these last couple months, especially because I think I think a lot of people have been able to utilize it as a platform to share kind of share those smiles and kind of share those laughs with everyone, right? And I mean, this is definitely a point in time where we've needed it, right? So
yeah, and I love it for business. People are like, you got TikTok? That's for kids. What can I tell you? The more authentic you are with your audience, your people, your investors, everyone, I think that is definitely for business.
Yeah.
Right.
And progressive thinking is definitely the way you have to go, particularly when it comes to technology. I mean, I remember my company, back in, I'm going to say 2006, 2007. I mean, there was like a company-wide Facebook ban, right? Because all they could see is, our employees are going to be sitting on it and wasting time and stuff like that, right? And it's amazing how, as time has gone on, I mean, social media has become a very important channel for any organization, right? It doesn't matter if you're large or small. So. Yeah.
Well, think about this for just a moment. Like right now, we're on this broadcast,
yeah.
right? And you're doing it from home. I mean, you have a mobile broadcasting station to your disposal with all the logos, all the writing, everything that before it used to take up a whole building. You needed a whole broadcasting station, like you'd have to go a whole studio. Now you can just do it from your home. And we can get information out there, whether it be positive or negative. It really, people can do whatever they want. I just choose to be someone that, shares positive energy.
Yeah. That's awesome. Good for you. Well, loving the content, particularly since COVID. I've watched a lot of your videos and I think they're fantastic. So keep doing what you're doing. You're fighting the good fight. So.
Thank you, Sean.
So when you were when you were evaluating kind of all the various real estate investing strategies and asset classes, what were kind of your contributing factors to ultimately deciding on, the multifamily apartment building buy and holds. The other thing I wanted to make mention of too, sorry, and I should have said this earlier, to anybody who's tuned in, because it looks like we got a couple people on the stream already. If you guys have any questions for Alfonso, right, particularly related to the topic of discussion of investing in apartment buildings, please do put your comments in the chat, and then basically at the next most opportune moment, we will make sure that we address those as well. So my apologies, off to you.
Yeah, so I guess the essence of your question is, how did I get into the asset class, the apartment building? And that's a really good question, because someone's going to be watching your show. It's probably because they're either interested in real estate or interested in business, or they're just curious. They're just like, oh, this real estate stuff sounds interesting. And so what happens usually is that people tend to operate based on their current situation. So your current income, your current credit, your current job, whatever it is, right? And so we tend to purchase real estate based on what we can afford. And that's the first mistake, right? If you're only buying what you can afford, well, so is everybody else, which drives up the prices of real estate. As you know, supply and demand, that's like business 101, right? Yeah. And so what happens is, that single door, that single family house, the condo, or what have you, or the 2Z or the 3Z, these are the most expensive piece of real estate per door that you can get, right? And so the reason that is because the value is based on emotion versus numbers. Right. And what happens is, as you start to get up in the doors, get up in apartments, get up in the units, the price per unit reduces. And so to me, it's just logical. You have more people paying down more of the expenses. Now, why doesn't anybody do this, right? The reason is that they are scared, because most of us tend to operate within our current circumstance. We can't see the future, right? We can't see where we're going. And usually what happens is someone spends a lot of time with the 1Zs and the 2Zs, figures out at some point that that's a lot of work, and then they level up to like 4, 5, 6, 7. To me, that step happened right away for me. And then I realized that a 7-unit building is actually less work than the duplex or the triplex. And so I said, well, what about a 10-unit? And then the first time I bought a 10-unit, I was like, whoa, that's less work than the 7-unit. More money, easier to manage. Yeah. So then I remember the first time I leveled up to a 13-unit. I was so scared, Sean. And then the first time I went to a 21 and a 36 and a 56. All these things used to scare me, because it's just like, whoa, the size of it scares people, not understanding that the more doors you have, that's the more income, the easier it is to manage, the easier it is to get it financed, because the lenders are now underwriting this deal as a business. Right. They're saying to themselves, can the asset qualify for this loan? Not you, the individual, not you, your debt to income ratio, and how much did you make last year? And so there's huge differences on why I chose the apartment building strategy. Now, coming out of 2008, the money just was tight, and the only mortgages that were kind of available really in 2008 were insured mortgages by CMHC. Yeah. And so I said, that's interesting, but they have a very strict criteria, right? They want purpose built. They don't like commercial that much. And the way they underwrite it, they're very conservative in their numbers. And I said, well, that's interesting. Why is that? I asked a question. You see, if you want to get good answers in life, you got to ask really good questions. So I asked those questions, like, why is your underwriting so strict? Well, because the government of Canada is insuring this mortgage, they want to be absolutely sure that nothing can go wrong. Yeah. And I said, well, why don't I adopt that model for my own business?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so ever since then, the way I look at deals is the same way that as a CMHC underwriter would look at a deal. That's the way I negotiate. That's the way I put my portfolio together. And I would say my go-to is always at some point to go to an insured mortgage product. And so being faced with this situation of COVID, I realized why I was so conservative in the first place, right? Because it's obviously no one can ever say, "Oh, there's going to be a pandemic." No one ever even thought that that would even be an issue for us.
Yeah.
But we were, in March 15th, I was scared.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think you and a lot of people. Yeah, for sure.
It's an
Yeah.
unknown, right? I mean, are people going to pay their rent? What's going to happen? And so we worked extremely hard. And April 1st came, and we were like, 97, 98% collected.
Yeah.
And now I realized everything that I did, because I stayed away from the shiny stuff. I stayed away from the hotels. I stayed away from the commercial stuff. I stayed away from the Airbnb. And so, very early on, I decided to make my real estate Armageddon proof. Now, I'm still a risk taker, Sean. When it comes to business, I have 11 companies in all different industries, and I am a risk taker.
Yeah.
But with my real estate, you need to have something that's Armageddon proof. And that's why I went into that. That's why I went into that asset class, and that's why I chose apartment buildings.
Yeah, and that is a fantastic explanation for it. And I've heard this a couple times. I mean, and it's great to see that you've kind of been able to tap into this knowledge, right? Because a lot of people talk about, and again, I mean, financing dependent, right? But a lot of people talk about, say, generating cash or generating profits in, say, like high margin businesses, right? And then effectively funneling those profits over into, like you said, an Armageddon proof business, something like owning apartment buildings, right? So that's your wealth retention. That's kind of your wealth growth type play, right? Like you said, no matter at the end of the day, I mean that's still a great place to be able to park that. Did have a question from Michael Grant. Thanks for joining on the stream, Mike. Thanks for your comment. His question was specifically said, when you say level up to a new property while maintaining the previous.
Yeah, so this is a really good question, and okay. So for me, it happened to be that I had to undo all of my mistakes. And my mistakes were really good, still good mistakes, but I just started too small, right? I started with the duplex, the triplex. In my early 20s, I was very big into flipping. So I was flipping a lot of properties. By the time the government is done with you and you're paying all the contractors and, then you start thinking like, whoa, this is a lot of work, right? And so, I had to level up quickly, or else I would have been stuck in just continuing to do what I would say really great business, like the duplexes and triplexes. I would say, yeah, you're all right with that, but you're not gonna create generational wealth like that impacts family, your the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 generations without leveling up.
Right.
And so for me, I had to level up. And the second I realized the power in 10 units and 15 units and 20 units, well, I started to liquidate all of the other stuff. So I guess in some regard, you could level up and keep what you have. But once you discover that something is better, why hold on to anything that it doesn't serve you?
To that point, for anybody who's looking to start out, and again, I mean, just as a generic point, kind of piece of advice, would you suggest to anybody who's looking to kind of get into, say, like multi-unit developments, to look at the smaller stuff first and kind of work their way up? Or would you say that there's really the same amount or a less amount of work in buying 15 units as compared to 3?
I get this question all the time, Sean. Yeah. Like, what should I do? I got 15 grand, I got a 20, I got, like, what should I do? What's my next move? Like, what's the neighborhood? What's
Yep.
the city? Like, what, everybody wants to know, like, the secret sauce, right?
Yep.
So I'll give it to you. The very first thing you should do is educate yourself. You need to learn. You need to know how to identify a deal. If you don't even know how to identify and underwrite a deal, no matter what you do, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Whether it's buying a duplex, a triplex, or a 10-unit, if you underwrite it wrong, you will be in trouble. You will lose money, right? And so the very first thing I think anybody should do is, find out who's the person that's doing what you're trying to do, and get some guidance, some mentorship. Go on YouTube, listen to podcasts like this, but don't just stay there. Invest into yourself, whatever it is. Buy a program, whatever it is. Get educated in learning how to identify what an actual deal really is. And once you get good at identifying what a real deal is, you will find that none of these duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes qualify within the real deal structure, like cash flow wise, right? Yeah. The more doors, the more cash flow in the deal. Now, to talk about a 26-unit building, that could be overwhelming for a lot of people. I would say start either, if you like anybody, I would say whatever you had in your mind, just level up a little bit, right? Get outside of your comfort zone. So if you thought you wanted to buy a duplex, go for like a 4-unit. If you wanted to start at a 5, well, why not start at a 7 or 8? Either way, you're going to learn a lot, and there's many different ways of learning. You can learn by spending the next 5 years fiddling around with duplexes and triplexes until you get to the end of the money or end of the credit, and you figured out that you've done it all wrong, and then you're going to pay the price somewhere. Or just simply seek out the information, find someone that that could guide you through this process. That way you limit the risk, and you now go to what makes sense.
Yeah. And that's a great answer. And that really speaks to, very much like the 10x kind of mentality, right? And again, not saying you have to take your number of units and multiply them by 10 or anything like that. Don't want people to think that's my message, right? But very much, taking that next step that's a little bit outside of your comfort zone, right? And kind of pursuing on that. Because I find that's a consistent challenge, that I typically run into people who want to get into real estate investing, right? Very much like you said, right? They want to do the onesie twosies, right? They're not interested in taking the time to invest into themselves or getting the training, getting the education to actually do something a little bit more involved and something a little bit more complicated. So
and what happens is, like, if you could sit down and create real concrete goals on your life, and it could be like, I want to end up, this is what I need to have freedom in my life, and everybody has a different number, right? Now you can reverse engineer that and say, okay, this is what I need to do for the next 5 years to accomplish that, right? And so every decision you're going to make should be based on the goals that you're looking for, or achieving those goals. What happens is people get caught up with what they have, and like we talked about it earlier, like they operate within their current situations, their current credit, their current income, and so they tend to buy real estate based on where they are, not where they're going. And so to buy real estate just simply because you can afford it, well, that's not a proper you're not following true real estate fundamentals,
right?
And so if you stick to the fundamentals of cash flow, learning how to underwrite a property, cash flow, decent cap rates, well, you wouldn't have bought that property to begin with. You're just buying it because you can afford it. And I'm going to tell you, usually whatever it's cheap out there, it's going to cost you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. Looking, just kind of a follow-up question from Michael. He's asking, can you elaborate on underwriting? So probably specifically speaking to kind of like what you had mentioned about CMHC.
Well, that would be a little bit more complicated, right? So this is Michael. I'm gonna give you a brief
Yep.
kind of synopsis of it.
For sure.
You have all properties start with income, gross income, and of course you want to take into account all the different expenses that you have. You have vacancies, you have repairs and maintenance, property management. Usually, you can get a lot of this information from the realtor, but I'm going to be honest with you. Not every realtor is going to add repairs and maintenance, vacancies, and property management. So that's part of your job when you underwrite a property. So those are your expenses. Now you have your net operating income. Your net operating income is what what everybody uses to evaluate property. This is another reason that I love apartment buildings, is because everything you do is based on numbers. So you have your gross incomes minus all of your expenses, gives you your net operating income. Now we're going to take away the debt service, right? The loan payment. And now you have your cash flow. In a nutshell, that's in underwriting, but of course it's going to be more detailed, and you really have to know what you're doing. I always want to review all of the documents, all of the leases, the expenses. This is where I spend a lot of my time in the due diligence, and you'll be surprised what I find. Most of the time, sellers forget to disclose certain items, realtors or what have you. So you really have to get good at underwriting deals. Now, if someone needs anything on further more explanation, by the end of this, they'll be able to contact me. I'm sure you'll put my email somewhere.
Yep, you betcha.
Yeah.
So kind of walking through the process, and we've talked about some of the metrics and some of the fundamentals that you definitely look at the property, right? And what's going to make it easier for you to get, that solid A lender, CMHC, insured financing at the end of the day. So speaking specifically on the acquisition side of things, how do you find most of your deals that, like very much like you described, that really meet the criteria that you're looking for?
Yeah, so I do this as a business full time, right? Here's the issue with a lot of investors: they do it as a sideline. Like, this is something that I'm going to do my 9 to 5, and then when I get home all tired, I might jump on the MLS, right? So I don't know if you can see behind me. I'm in my office. This is like, I have a fully functioning office where we have an acquisitions department. We have operations, which is the management side of things. We have administration. We have a boardroom. People can come in here. We have our investors come in here. I meet my investors here all the time. And so they see it's a real operation. And so I've taken it seriously. I've invested in myself. I'm invested into my facility. I've invested into my team. And so it's very hard for people to turn this into a real legitimate business if they're not willing to invest in themselves.
Right.
And so for me in my business, we're looking for deals on a daily basis. And so why aren't people successful? Well, everybody's too much in a rush. And that's the difference between, I would say anything below 5 units and above 5 units, right? And I'll make that distinction real quickly when you see the amount of inventory and the amount of buyers versus, the amount of activity, right, in a market. 5 and up, how many people do you personally know that are looking for 50-unit buildings?
Oh, yeah. I mean, under 10 for sure. Yeah.
Under 10.
Yep.
How many people do you personally know that are looking for a duplex, a triplex, or a single family home?
Yeah, I'm going to say probably 100.
So that's the bulk of the business. And so what people don't realize that once you get into commercial, once you get into apartment buildings, everything slows down.
Right.
Everything slows down, right? Conversations last longer. The discovery process takes longer. Some of the deals that I just signed papers for a 21-unit building today. It's closing tomorrow, and that property was under contract since last July.
Wow.
And before that, the first time I looked at that property was the July before that, right? And so there's a process here. And so if everybody's in a rush to get their next property, most likely you're going to overpay, guaranteed. And so what I say, and I say this to my students all the time, always have your pipeline full, right? You know, there's things on MLS. If things are being listed on MLS, well, give a call the realtor, have a discovery call, right? See what are the motivation. What's the motivation behind the seller, and what's the property? When was it listed? You know, I'm going to take my time, and once I put it under contract, I'm going to slow it down even more, right? I want to make sure I do all my due diligence. I'm going to do my inspections, my engineering reports, my phase 1 environmentals. I'm going to do everything the right way. I'm not going to rush. Some of these things in the conditional period, it could take 6 months. You know, CMHC takes about 4 to 5 months to roll out, a mortgage. And so, you know, in under 5, everybody's in a rush. If you're in a rush, you're going to overpay. Above 5, everything slows down. And the more units, the more control that you have. That's what I enjoy about it, right? And so, you know, that's kind of like how I would say we turn it into a daily activity at looking at properties, but doesn't mean that I'm buying properties on a daily, every single day.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just simple discovery. It's like, hey, who's the seller? Okay, let me know. Let me see how this goes through the summer, right? Let me see that, you know, just listed. Okay, you know, I'll call you back in 2 months. Keep me in mind. Let me know if it doesn't sell. Oh, it's under contract right now. Okay. Let me know if something happens, right? So I poke my nose in, and then I just allow time to happen. I'm not in a rush. Remember, whoever needs the deal the most will probably overpay.
That's right. Yeah, and that piece of advice you gave about keeping your pipeline full. Yeah, I mean that is, again, what a great, fantastic piece of advice. I'm sure that you find that a lot of your day is probably having conversations and networking, and just kind of getting the word out. Right. I know that even for myself. I mean, you had kind of mentioned about taking it from a part-time passion to all of a sudden kind of a full-time endeavor. Yeah, I mean, my entire day is almost inquiries, right? There's people looking for money. There's people that got deals they want to sell, right? There's people that got money they want to lend, right? So in a lot of instances, you kind of become the, you know, almost like the traffic cop, right? You're just kind of directing traffic, you know, every which way, and making sure that, you know, things need to get in the hands of the people that can execute on it. So,
well, you know, we've turned it into a business.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a legitimate business that has profits and, you know, teams and people, and, you know, the better I become as a leader, the more investment that I make on myself as a leader, the better my people are, and the more efficient that the organization functions.
Yeah.
And so this is why, you know, March 15th, you know, as you know, March 15th, like, the world will never be the same after March 15th or 16th or whenever it was, you know. And I was actually in Saskatoon when this happened. And I remember thinking, I got to get back to Ontario. I don't want to be stuck out here, right? And, you know, I have a lot of things there, but I need to be in my headquarters. I need to see what's going on. I have a responsibility to my investors. I have a responsibility to my staff, to my lenders, to my tenants. And so I went right into action mode, and we started communicating with everyone on a daily basis. That's what a leader does, right? We need, as leaders, we can't just hide during these moments. And this is why during the COVID, we were able not only to thrive, but outdo what we thought we would have ever done if it wasn't for COVID, right? Yeah. And since March 15th, I knew nothing was ever going to be the same again. And so I was able to go into action mode, and that's a team. That's a business. We have a business. I'm accountable to everyone here, the staff, the tenants, investors. I cannot let anybody down. Yeah. So a lot of people that are out there trying to start their own business. Imagine, you know, if you have someone that you're going to invest in that does this as a sideline, well, you know, what's gonna be the priority, their job or the business?
Yeah.
And so at some point you're gonna have to dive right in. You know, maybe not at the beginning, but at some point you have to dive in and live and breathe real estate, which is what I did a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. You got to take that leap of faith. One thing that I really liked that you mentioned there is very much the action taking that you know that you basically implemented as part of your own strategy and part of your own business. Because I think that the true winners from, let's just say, even from a business aspect, right, are going to be the people that accelerated their rate of action taking during COVID instead of treating this like a somewhat unexpected holiday. Because I saw a lot of that too.
Oh. Well, you know, I always tell people there's three types of people, right? There's the contractors. There's people that just run for shelter, right? People that see what's happening and they're like, oh my God, the world sucks. It's over. That's it. We're done. Yeah. Right. Then there's the spectators. They're like, oh, I'm just going to watch everybody destroy their lives or whatever. Yeah. Then there's the people that actually are going to expand during this time. And before COVID, now I'm going to be honest with you, Sean, right here on your program and say that, you know what? I also suffered of this, right? You know, I was traveling all across North America on stages. And whenever it came to learn something new, if it wasn't very specific to what I was doing, I would say I have no time, yeah. Right? And we have been given the most beautiful gift, which is time, which is why you want to do real estate in the first place, right? You want to create time for yourself, right? And think about what a beautiful gift all of us have been given as a humanity, right? Some of us have a little bit more time than others, but we all have time. We're all working from home. And think about what you can do with that time. I did a video on my channel. I don't know if you're subscribed to my channel, but I suggest that you should, because I do a lot of these types of videos and I kind of share what's happening in my life. But I talked about the return on investment on COVID-19, yeah. Right? Now, COVID-19 is not going anywhere, but the very least that you could do is at the end of this, you can come out better than you were going into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is a message, and I mean that's a conversation that I've been having consistently. What I've been finding in a lot of situations is that, yeah, I mean sometimes people just need that helpful push, right? They just need, they need that little bit of inspiration, right? They need that little bit of encouragement that, yeah, don't worry, you can do it, right? Yeah, I mean don't take this period of time, like you said. I mean this has been very much a gift. I mean we all had to make decisions of what we wanted to do these past couple months, and again, I mean some people utilize their time very well, and others people, well, whatever. I guess that's
they watch Netflix.
yeah, exactly, right. So I hear apparently Tiger King has been a big thing these last couple of months. I can't tell you too much about it. So perfect. So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So kind of moving through the process, right? So you find a great deal, and I think this is where people a lot of times really get hung up in the process, right? So even from my own experience, right, and this is going to be, I'm going to say probably 4 or 5 years ago, right? I mean, I think I had 2 rental properties that I owned, right? Single family homes type thing. Yeah, for sure. And there was an apartment deal that kind of came around, right? So when I
saw the one in Red Deer.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, just one in Red Deer, right? And I remember looking at it, and and I'm like, oh yeah, this looks good, this looks great, and everything else, right? I think it probably had a price tag of, I don't know, maybe it was like 1.5 million or kind of something at the time, right? But I could not, for the life of me, actually.
How many doors?
That one I think was probably about 12 doors. I'm gonna say.
So you have it's about 125 a door.
Yep.
125.
Yeah, which wouldn't necessarily be. I mean, that would be, I would kind of say, fairly average for the area, right? And again, I mean, I don't know if this thing was necessarily a deal any way, shape, or form, right? It was just kind of something I was looking at, right? And the one thing that I found going through that process is, I mean, I had not a great level of guidance or even education, again, on exactly how I'm going to make this purchase at the end of the day, right? I had words getting thrown around at me like vendor take back, seller financing, oh, don't worry, all we need to do is incorporate a company and you can get an offering memorandum in the go, or there's these, private issuer exemptions and all this other kind of stuff. So a lot of things getting thrown at me, but not really a whole lot of solutions, right? So in your own business and in your own world, I mean, I guess where did you find that particularly you had to start on, say, like a deal structure method, and how does that look in your business today? Do you just still deal in a lot of creative financing strategies, or do you find your business is kind of more at the point where you can operate, say, kind of more in a traditional manner, or maybe that's the preferred method of doing it?
I am creative by nature, right? My mind just figured things out, yep. Right? And I've always been that way ever since I negotiated my first deal. My first deal was a really tough negotiation, really tough, and it was a really tough competitor as well. It was my mom.
Oh.
So my mom had a really strict bedtime of 8:00, and and when we moved to Canada, in the summertime here, at 8:00, there's still sun outside, yeah. Right? And I was like, Mom, what are you talking about? Bedtime. Look outside. It's sunny, right? And so that whole summer, I worked on my mom, and I finally won. It was extended to 9 p.m. And so, that was my first negotiations, yep. and I learned a lot about that. Number one, never give up. Never give up, right? And if you watch kids, they're the most amazing negotiators. Yeah. Here's the truth. If you have a seller and you have a buyer, and this person truly wants to sell, and this person truly wants to buy, there shouldn't be anything getting in the way from these two people coming to an agreement, a sale, right? What happens is this person gets into their head and this person gets into their head, and then nothing happens. But if someone really wants to buy and someone really wants to sell, there's ways of making the deal happen no matter what. And that's the types of deals that I love. I love entering into negotiations, spending my time during that discovery process where I get to find out everything about the seller. What are they going to do with the money? Before I start going into vendor takebacks, before I start going into, agreements for sale or any type of strategy, I'm going to sound like an idiot if I don't find out about the seller on whether or not the seller is in a position to take on any of these creative strategies.
Right.
And so usually what happens is somebody reads something in a book, or they go to a seminar, or they hear about something on YouTube or whatever, and then they go out and try to do a VTB in the marketplace, and the marketplace says, get out of here. You know what I mean? You don't know what you're talking about. And then that person says this stuff doesn't work.
Yeah.
You see, there's an opportune moment to offer a vendor take back, or an agreement for sale, or a different type of structure that is unconventional, that people haven't heard or seen before.
Yeah.
The first thing you need to know is whether or not the seller is motivated, and whether or not the seller is in a position to do such a thing, right? So you said something very important, a vendor take back. So a vendor take back is very simple. It's a very simple strategy. This is when the seller helps out the buyer by providing the funds that they already have in the property. They already have to have in the property, and leaving those funds behind to help you purchase the property. For example, $100,000 property, you need $20,000 down. The seller has $20,000 in equity, and the seller decides to help you out with a vendor take back of $20,000 that will be registered back onto the property as a secondary lien.
Yeah.
What does this mean? It means that you probably get your original source of funding from another institution, $80,000, and then the seller helps you out with the $20,000 that you need in order to close the deal, making the deal essentially 100% financed. Now, I wouldn't even know to approach the seller about this type of strategy if I didn't first find out, number one, how much equity does the seller have in the property? Number two, what's he plan to do with that equity? Because if he needs to, liquidate his full equity because he wants to move to Tahiti, well, he might not be in a position to offer that VTB to you. You see what I'm saying? Right. Yeah. And so a lot of the time, everybody's in a rush. They ask the wrong questions, and they get into situations where the person is insulted, and they tell you to go to hell, when really all you needed to do is spend a little bit more time during a discovery, finding out all the needs and problems of the seller. So in your mind, if you want to be successful in real estate, you need to look at yourself as a professional problem solver. And if all sellers, they're selling for a reason. You just got to discover that. Sometimes you might have to educate the sellers on all the benefits of doing a vendor take back. You see, most of the time, everybody that gets into real estate, when they get into negotiations, it's always about me. What am I going to get out of it?
Right.
That's exactly what happened to me. The very first time I read it in a book. Vendor take back. I had my book. I had my my vendor take back. As I had it here, I highlighted it. I had the page. You fold the corner there to make sure you don't forget it. I was literally holding it with me when I met the realtor, and I said, I would like to do. Hold on a second. Hold on. I would like to do a vendor take back, please. Like I'm ordering at a restaurant. And the realtor said he's not going to accept that.
No.
I said, yes, he will. He's like, no, you don't think he's going to accept that? Well, I told him, you have a legal obligation to present my offer. It says so right here in this book, right? And so they told me to go to hell, right? At the end of the day, until I learned that there's a proper time when everything gets unfolded. And when you unfold something, there has to be education there, because guess what? The realtor might need some education. It's like that 17-year-old kid, trying to get to third base on the first date, right? You're too much in a rush. Like, you got to take your time. What about romance, right? And so this is exactly what real estate is. It's relationship based. It's problem solving. It's about you getting the right education. First of all, before you could ever, put together some of these deals, you have to be educated. You have to have that intellectual currency. And the more intellectual currency you have, the less actual currency you'll need.
Yeah. And again, I mean, that is something that I've seen time and time again, where you have somebody who has read something in a book, right? They have no, say, practical understanding of how exactly to implement it or how to execute it or even how it's going to play into that. I mean, and again, that can be extremely frustrating for everyone involved, right? Particularly, like you said, when it's really just, the seller and the buyer that are trying to ultimately get together and to get this thing done. So,
yeah. If there's a seller and there's a true buyer, there's no reason why there can't be a deal. And I've done deals 100% vendor takebacks. I've bought apartment buildings that are 90% vendor takebacks, or 75 or 20% vendor takebacks. It really doesn't matter. If I really want the deal, I'm going to buy the deal.
Yeah. Just going back to CMHC and just kind of some of those questions. Now, I know again, like when you talk about, say, like a single family home or kind of, again, that asset class, right? One thing that seems to be fairly constant is that anytime there's a mortgage insurer involved, right? Whether it be CMHC, Genworth, Canada Guarantee, kind of any of those guys, usually any hint kind of any sort of like creative something going on type thing, right, we'll typically send the mortgage insurer packing. For a lot of the strategies like what we've talked about, do you find that, again, in this type of asset class, the mortgage insurer is more than happy to participate, or do they still kind of, I guess, draw certain lines on what's acceptable and what's not?
Good question. I'll say this. When you're looking at commercial lending, it's more about the asset than anything else, right? So they're looking at the asset. And if I've bought properties that are insured with CMHC with 4 mortgages, right? All they need to know is, can the property support all of these mortgages? If it cannot, then they probably will say, no, we're not gonna approve it, right? And so, and I think it's great. I mean, it just keeps people from being over leveraged. But if you had, because they're always going to come in with a lower valuation, so it's normal that you would have other secondary forms of financing, and they're going to be okay with that as long as the property can support it. And what do I mean by that? After all expenses are paid, can the property service all of the debt? If you have vendor takebacks, third mortgages, fourth mortgages, it doesn't really matter. But can the property service all of the debt and still have cash flow at the end?
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. That's great to know. I think that's, again, one of those things where there's a real misconception, particularly say in that asset class, or once you kind of get into the commercial lending side of things. So, well,
the reason for that, Sean, is because lenders, and you have to put yourself in a position of a lender, right? If I'm going to lend my money to you, what if something happens to you? What's going to happen to me? They don't want to own single family homes. Yeah. It's a bad investment, right? Why would they want to do it? And so this is why all the onus is on you, right? The buyer, because it's a bad investment and they're lending you money it's only if you really, really want it. It's like a really nice car. That's a luxury, right? They'll finance you as long as you can afford it. And so that's the difference between the commercial side of things and the, single families, the duplexes, the triplexes, the residential type of lending, where it's very much dependent on you, your ability to, your income, your debt to income ratio, your credit, your everything. And this is why they don't want you to, have 2 mortgages or 3 mortgages. It doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, they're on the hook.
Yeah.
And if something happens and you don't have any equity, no skin in the game, you can just walk away from this, right? And now they're left behind holding the bag, right? Versus a multi-unit, that if you bought a multi-unit and I'm the lender and you walk away, well, I still have 36 other rents to collect that I know that the property can at least sustain. The bank is not going to lose any money, and they can take their time to sell it to somebody else, not having to lose money.
Yeah, the property stands on its own, right? It makes sense as an investment on the basis of the numbers, right? Like very much like you had said. So that's fantastic. So we talked a little bit about the importance of getting proper education, potentially getting some coaching or something like that going into it. So vendor takebacks aside, somebody who's looking to get into their first deal, let's just kind of assume in this situation that they've gotten a little bit of education and they've gone on the market, they find a deal that kind of makes good sense as a strategy. VTBs aside, what would your advice be to somebody that ultimately wants to get this thing under contract and get it purchased at the end of the day?
Okay, so someone has already gone through the path of learning how to underwrite the deal. So
you betcha.
You're going to assume it's a really good deal.
Yep, you got her. Yeah.
Right. So now once you identify a really good deal, and this is your time where the negotiations begin, right? And so you would underwrite the deal, and then you would see what is the proper offer that you could present that, match your underwriting, meaning is there cash flow, all the requirements that you need as an investor, right? And so you put the deal under contract, you set, it's going to be a conditional deal, right? It's going to be conditional. And by the way, depending on the type of financing that you're going to get, right? So CMHC takes a really long time. And so what I usually do, I figure out how to buy it any way possible.
Yeah.
And then I take my time afterwards getting the property ready to, for it to be approved by CMHC. And so that could be a year later or a year and a half later. So the seller may not be in a position to wait for me for a year and a half to get an approval from CMHC.
That's right. Yeah.
So I have a conditional offer. It's going to be conditional on reviewing all of the leases, the expenses 3 years back. I'm going to have inspection on there. I'm going to need a phase 1 environmental. If you guys don't know what a phase 1 environmental is, definitely something that you should look into, because all commercial lenders require for you to have a phase 1 environmental. You can Google it, see what a phase 1 environmental. Some lenders are going to require for you to have an engineering report, which means that the property has, the structure of the property is sound. You're going to have financing conditions, and in residential lending, in houses and duplexes and triplexes, the twosies and the threesies, pretty much you get 10 days to do all this, right? It's not unusual for commercial residential for you to have a 30-day conditional clause in the agreement. That's not unusual. You need 30 days to get, to make sure you have all your financing and, everything in place. Now, I do all of this before I even go on the property, right? When I step foot on the property, I've already reviewed all the documents. Before we even get to the property, sometimes there's mistakes in the numbers that were presented. Water bills that, they said the water bill is going to be X amount. By the time we've done doing our analysis over the past 3 years, it turns out that no, that was not true. And so that's the due diligence. That's the part where you're going to spend a little bit more time. Then I'll go to the property, and that's when the real negotiations begin. Because after I've ironed out all the numbers, I know I have all my numbers, I know exactly where I am with this deal. I'm going to go to the property, and then I'm going to really look at this property like with a microscope, right? Like, my inspection is going to be like, I'm going to have the window person there. I'm going to have the inspector, the roofer, the foundation. I want to check everything out, right? Because I'm making a decision. And usually, and I'm going to say mostly, I'm going to find things that I can now go back and renegotiate.
Yeah.
So this is where the harsher negotiations start, because I've now seen the property. You see, people want to go into the deal and lowball right away, but you haven't even seen the property. You know what I mean? You haven't even walked through the property. How can you be lowballing? And because this is an emotional sport where people's emotions are tied to real estate, maybe they bought this, it was like their baby. You wouldn't appreciate someone coming along and pointing out how ugly your baby is. And so I'm going to do everything with class. I'm going to be respectful. I'm going to, I'm always going to tell the sellers that it's a beautiful property. I love it, but these are some of the deficiencies, and this is why I need a price reduction.
Yeah.
And I've been in situations that, we do a walkthrough, price reduction. We do we look at all the numbers that were presented, price reduction. I do an inspection, price reduction. Oh, the inspection catches some issues in the foundation. Let's get a foundation person here, and price reduction. And so by the time we're done, we're looking at 3 to 4 months now, and now we're ready to buy the property.
Yeah, like you said, quite the process, right? Very involved.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is why everybody needs education.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to try to wing it on your first time. And I'm sure you had a mentor coach. I've had mentor coach, you know what I mean? And I continue to mentor and coach my students through these types of deals.
Yeah, for
Right
sure.
now, there's someone texting me. I have a student right now texting me. He's got a deal under contract. So,
Well, hopefully he's watching the stream too and learning something. So
there you go. There you go.
So on
Maybe
the operating side of things, so let's again kind of keep moving down the path, and let's assume you've got it up and running, like you said. I mean, you like to get into a situation where you can get some sort of financing in place so that you can get the property like in your company up and operating, right? The performers are starting, right? You're basically seeing the history, right? You're starting to prove out the numbers, that type of thing, with hopes of putting much better financing on it down the line, type thing. What have you specifically learned about, or I guess what are some things that really kind of stick out to you as probably the most important lessons on the operating side of things?
I probably have a lot.
Why don't we say top three? So
I'll go with top three.
Okay.
Well, start with this. The reason why people invest with me in our company is because we're really good operators. In fact, we're really great operators, and we have a system in place, people, teams, and this is the first thing I'll tell people. You have to create systems. You cannot go into it, being disorganized, paperwork in shoeboxes. Like, this is no way to operate a business. Even if you have a small business, right? You will never grow into a big business because you're operating as a small business. At the very beginning, I needed to establish where was I going, right? And so I told you, at the beginning of the interview, my goal for the next 5 years is to get to 7,500 doors.
Wow.
My goal for the next 10 years is to get to 75,000. So how am I going to achieve that? Well, I need to have a company that could support 7,500 doors. I'm not going to wait till I get there to then build the infrastructure. I'm building the infrastructure right now in order to be able to, to support 7,500 doors. And then when I get there, I'm going to build the infrastructure to be able to support 75,000. Going back to the little guy starting out, well, whatever your goal is, I mean, you don't have to have a goal of 7,500 doors to be successful, but what is your goal? You should have goals. And whatever your goals is, double it, because they're probably small goals, and you were probably operating within what you thought you were capable of. As you know, we are capable of anything. We're limitless. It's only our own minds that kind of, keep us, contracting. And you can't expand and contract at the same time. And so what is that goal? Is it 20 units? Is it 30? Is it 40? Whatever it is, choose a number. And now think about it. Does someone that owns 40 units or 50 units, do they operate out of a shoebox? No, they don't. So, you have to look for systems. There's lots of great systems online that can help you manage the deal. Hire people. I'm not afraid to hire people because now it relieves my time to do the things that are really profitable in my business.
Yeah.
Here's rule number one when it comes to operations. And this is a personal rule, but if you remember this one rule, this one podcast is going to be worth millions. I'm telling you. But never represent yourself as the property owner. Never represent yourself as a property owner. Now, I made that horrible mistake back when I was getting started. I'm the owner. I'm so proud. I mean, people get so proud, right?
Yeah.
But share it with your friends, share it on Facebook. But when you are on the property dealing with your tenants, you should always be the property manager.
Right.
That way you can now talk with people and you're just someone there that works. You've been hired, whatever they ask you, let me check with the owners. Let me check with the owners. Let me check with the owners. Now, when I learned that, my life changed. Now, I mean, people right now, as they're watching this, they're managing 3 or 4 units and they're like, this is horrible. I can't even manage 3 or 4. Alfonso has hundreds across Canada. And how is he doing it? Well, you know what? I'm never the owner. You know, when I can step on any of my properties, not one person will know me as the owner.
Right.
And sometimes people will come and ask, and I'm say, well, I'm just here to clean. You know, I'm here. I'm the insurance adjuster.
Yeah.
It really, really doesn't matter. So, number 1, never represent yourself as the owner. Number 2, you know, don't be cheap. Hire people. And number 3, get yourself a system. Get organized. And the more organized you are, the more people you can hire, the more properties you can support, and then you'll reach your goals in no time.
Like you said, there's $1 million worth of value right there. So, and I think
I'm telling you, that is like that's from my experience, right? I'm not telling anybody what to do, but you know, that's from my experience.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you very much. That's been a lot of great information. Going back to goals here, really quick. I realize we're over an hour. Didn't even feel like it. So, so what?
Did we do the Joe Rogan? Did we do the Joe Rogan?
So, and for anybody watching too, just so you know, we are actually going to get Alfonso back here probably in a couple months because he's got an amazing story. I mean, particularly on his journey as an investor. So we're going to do another call where it's just going to be you know very much where he came from, you know, everything he kind of learned along the way and everything else. So, and we'll do a big kind of segment. What was that?
My pleasure.
Yeah, fantastic. And we will definitely do a kind of a big segment on goals at that point in time. But as it relates to it right now, so you had mentioned, you know, you want to scale up, you know, so you want to scale up to that $7,500 mark, right? You eventually want to be able to get to 75,000, right? Any other kind of major future goals that you have, either in your business or your life type thing that?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. I almost forgot.
Yep.
So I've been doing this. So I've been a trainer, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, a professional speaker for going on 15 years now. And my passion is teaching people, changing their lives, and creating financial freedom. And why do I do it? I do it, for my grandkids and my great grandkids. So they one day, they'll Google me and they won't see all the stuff that I bought, all the units, all the apartments. They'll see all the lives that I changed. That's why that's why I'm doing this show. I'm hoping that someone can get something out of this show that is going to be impactful in their life. Yeah. When I was 15 years old, no one was there with that information. And it's really, really valuable information, financial literacy, personal development, public speaking, sales. So a long time ago, I started speaking in high schools, and I wanted to inspire younger people to, either get in business or just have a different perspective of where they can go and what they can achieve. And so I went with the school and I said, man, 1 hour is just not enough. I mean, we've been talking for an hour.
It doesn't feel like it at all. Yeah,
we haven't even started, right? I mean, like we can go on and on because there's just so much to teach and transfer. That's what a true mentor is it's like, I want to transfer what I know, transfer experience. And there's such a lack in that in the school system right now. And the problem is, even if there was reform and there was financial education, financial literacy, you can't have someone that's financially illiterate teaching financial literacy. Yeah, it just doesn't work. And so I had this amazing proposal and I said, I need the young people for a day. Give me a day. And throughout this day, we're going to go through business strategies, marketing, sales. Imagine if you learned how to sell at 16 years old. Oh, where would you be today?
I would have had a lot more dates, I can tell you that much. So.
And so from selling, we go through public speaking, work ethic, in financial literacy, mortgages, credit, all that stuff in a day. And so, I mean, it's pretty jam-packed. And so the school board said, no, Alfonso, this looks like it's a little bit too heavy for our kids. And they just won't get it. They won't understand. And so I could do two things. Either I could just sit there and complain or do nothing, or do do something, right? And that's what I chose to do. I started a foundation. It's called the Quadra Youth Foundation. I would appreciate it very much if everybody that's listening to this just goes on Facebook and simply likes the page, goes on Instagram, Quadra Youth Foundation. You can go check us out on online. And basically what we're doing is we are teaching young people all of these skill sets that we just talked about: public speaking, business, marketing, work ethic, real estate, credit, mortgages. When I was in grade 5, I asked a really important question to one of my teachers. I said, "What's a mortgage?" And you know what the teacher said to me? You won't believe it. The teacher said, "A mortgage is something you get when you're older." What kind of answer is that? You know, and the reason is they didn't have the information. They don't have the resources. By the way, I really appreciate all our teachers. I mean, they're working extremely hard, but they have no tools. They have no resources. Yeah. So our foundation is an event-based business that we go anywhere in the world where there's young people and they need to learn this information. Because of COVID, we are not doing any events this year, but we're going to do them all online. And we have actually something planned for the end of July. So what I'm looking for is for leaders, community leaders, to help me expose this information to younger people, meaning making sure that they sign up for the workshop online and that they're there, that they show up. Once they show up, they're going to love it. Trust me. But that's what I'm looking for. So if anybody wants to participate and help me out, they can send me an email, info@alfonsoquadra.com. But at the very least, if they can just support the movement, go to our Facebook and just like the page, Quadra Youth Foundation. Like the page on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever you can find us. Support the mission.
That's awesome. And that is an extremely, extremely noble cause. Just so everybody knows, my wife, Jennifer, she's actually put the Quadra Youth Foundation links in the comments as well. So you can find some of that information there.
Beautiful.
And of course, feel free to follow up. So I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I can tell you that I've been instilling financial literacy into her wherever I can. I'm actually very proud of her math skills at 5 years
Beautiful.
old, that kind of thing. Right. So yeah, I mean, that's something that I would love even for her to check out, kind of thing. Right. Because I mean, if there's one thing that I found in my life is, again, I mean, financial literacy, financial knowledge is never going to do anyone any wrong, right? I mean, as to whatever extent you decide that you're going to apply it in your life is fine, right? But not knowing can cause a lot of damage as compared to, say, knowing it. And you know what? Maybe you decide to take kind of a fairly minor, mediocre kind of approach in how you're going to implement it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, very, very, very important knowledge to know. So, Alfonso, this has been fantastic. I want to thank you again for taking the time. I'm pretty sure that everybody who's tuned in has gotten a lot of value out of this thing. We covered off a lot of topics. We definitely want to do a follow-up because I definitely want to get you back so we can kind of dig into some of these things a little bit more. So again,
we're an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, we're an hour and 15. You officially broke the record. So
Joe Rogan did.
Yeah, exactly. So again, Alfonso Quadra, his link is actually right down there in the ticker, somewhere down there, alfonsoquadra.ca. This has been the Expert Series, episode number 5. You guys can find Alfonso right on Facebook there. So he's got both a personal page as well as a business page. His business page is at Alfonso Quadra 13. On Instagram at Alfonso Quadra. And do you want them to reach out to you via email too? They got any questions, Alfonso?
Yeah, any questions whatsoever. If someone's interested in leveling up.
Perfect. Okay. Well, we'll put
let's have that conversation.
Yeah, and we'll make sure we put your email address in the comments as well, just because I don't have it handy. So
info@alfonsoquadra.com.
info@alfonsoquadra.com. Perfect. Well, this has again been fantastic, my friend. Thank you very much. This has been a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure anybody who watches this, whether they're watching it live or whether they're going to be watching the replay, is going to get a ton of value out of this. Want to thank everybody again for taking the time out of your day to spend some time with us and learn about investing in apartment buildings and the various other topics that we've kind of got into as well. So again, your host, Sean Claremont, our special guest, Alfonso Quadra, and we will see you here soon. Thanks a lot, Alfonso.
Yes, sir.
Take care, buddy.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to comment down below, subscribe, hit the bell to be notified the next time we're doing a video. And guess what? Like, share, dislike, I don't care! Let me see how that looks.